Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Priscila Riffo. I am a teacher of English as a foreign language from the Universidad Católica, and carrying out a PhD at the University of Southampton currently. And today I'm going to present some prior findings from my doctoral research. So the objective of my research is to explore the concept of the good EFL teacher in the Chilean context. To do this, I planned a qualitative nature research where all the participants of this research are considered a case, and the Preservice teachers are the focus of my research. So through them, I want to explore this concept of the good EFL teacher. 9 Preservice teachers doing their last stage practicum, which is called internado in this program. 4 supervisors who are the teacher educators assessing and guiding these Preservice teachers during this practicum. 5 profesores guía who are the school teachers that allow these Preservice teachers to teach in some of their classes and are the direct contact with the university, between the university and school. 2 mentors who are the school teachers as well, but they additionally comply with the duties of supervision, and they completed a mentoring program some years ago. That's why I call them mentors. And additionally, the program leader and the Faculty of Education Dean were also part of this data collection. The gathering of this data was carried out in Araucanía region in 2019 from August to December during the second academic term. And these Preservice teachers were distributed among public and private schools. Public and subsidized schools. And the data is being analyzed through thematic analysis. So a little bit about the school's context where these Preservice teachers carried out their internado. This is in relation to what they reported in this document, which is the portfolio, which is a digital document where they evidence progress along their internado. And they had to observe lessons for the first 2 weeks. It's just an induction week. So they gathered that many of these students were called vulnerable. Vulnerable, according to UNAEB, is a social condition that is intersected by other different conditions and can cause a disadvantage in a learner. So some of these schools had more than 90% of vulnerable students. When they applied an entry test at the beginning of their internado, they found out that these students had an A1 level or sometimes below that. And in some cases, some of these students had not yet developed listening comprehension, for example. They reported that many of these students didn't have an interest to learn English, and they gathered this information with school teachers, the head teacher or the English teacher from the school, plus the grades, the records of the grades from these students. And they also observed during these first 2 weeks that these school teachers or profesores school teachers didn't use much English at all times during the class. And with this, I'm not saying that none of them used English, but they reported that some of them only used English in certain occasions. So, well, these Preservice teachers, as I said at the beginning, were 9, and here you can see the distribution among the schools. So in one school, school 4, there are 3 of them. There are 2 supervisors and 3 profesores guía. In school 3, there are 2, and school 2, there are 2 as well. And then you can see the 9 Preservice teachers with their supervisors or mentors or professors guía, whichever the case it was. So to collect the data, well, I carried out a semi-structured interview at the beginning of the internado to all the participants. This was between September and October. Then a second semi-structured interview as a wrap up of this process of internado was carried out to all the participants again. 2 stimulated recall interviews were applied to Preservice teachers. I observed their lessons, one at the beginning and one at the end of the internado, and I interviewed them usually right after their lesson implementation, or if not the following day, and ask them questions in relation to the decisions they made while they were teaching. And a focus group where 7 out of the 9 Preservice teachers participate. Additionally, there are documents such as national policy, the internal rules and regulations that are also part of this research, and the portfolio as well. So at the beginning of this internado, I asked all the participants the following question: what does it mean for you to be a good EFL teacher in the Chilean context? There were different answers. At this time, Preservice teachers had not yet been in charge of their classes. So they all had high expectations of what they wanted to do, or how they wanted to perform as a good EFL teacher. So there were many things that came out, many ideas, but today I'm going to talk particularly about one, which is the good command of English language. So here we can see some of the quotes from the interviews. These are fictional names, of course. Pamela says, but if you teach them nonsense stuff, you lose credibility as a teacher. So she was telling me that English was important, because what are you going to teach otherwise if you don't know the language? Ricardo says the ideal thing would be to speak in English 90 or 100% of the time. And Susana talks about credibility as well. The credibility is linked to knowing the language. Then you lose credibility if you don't master the English language. And the student does not take you seriously. So if we think about the theory that is reflected in the national policy, and we think about the estándares orientadores para carreras de pedagogía en inglés, where there are 2 types of standards, disciplinary and content knowledge, 10 of each. In the disciplinary standards, there are 6 of them that are related to knowing the English language and its constituents, having a C1 level of English by the moment you start teaching, and promote a communicative approach to teach. And if we look at the bases curriculares, we can see that there are second language acquisition theories too, where the idea that students will receive input with the teacher in the classroom is there. So because obviously outside of the classroom in Chile, there are not many chances to speak English. So from that point of view, it seems reasonable to establish that a foreign language class only can be taught in the L2, as it seems the L1 could lead to preventing the learning of the target language. So after having asked this question to Preservice teachers, I thought about how these conceptions about knowing the English language translated in this school's context. Preservice teachers had this idea that knowing the language would reflect in the lessons, and then they could teach English better in a way. So, well, I'm gonna say something that probably everyone has seen, or if you taught in a school, we've done it. So the first thing was translation. Immediate translation. So in these cases, Preservice teachers just, after I observed their lessons and I saw what they did, I asked them, like, I noticed that you gave an instruction and you translated immediately into English, or you were doing a reading activity and you were translating the reading immediately, or you organized the class and then you translated it immediately into Spanish. Why did you do that? So then they gave me reasons why they used the L1 instead of the L2. So the first thing is time. Preservice teachers know they have to finish their lesson within 90 minutes. It results a bit problematic already, because sometimes they take more time in certain parts of the lesson. So they think it's a time issue. Pamela says it's basically because of a time matter that I immediately use Spanish. Then Rosemary says, because I've tried to teach other lessons using more English, but an activity in Spanish takes me 10 minutes and in English it takes me 20. And these are very simple activities. So the only way to shorten the activity and simplify it is by reducing the use of English in the classroom. Then as a mediator, Beatriz says that, so I tried that they listen to English, but I immediately try to make the connection with the Spanish, so they start getting familiar with the language. So she says that she uses immediate translation as a way to bridge the learning. For classroom management, Fernando says, I add parts in Spanish. Otherwise, if I talk to them all the time in English, they start losing attention. Because they had Preservice teachers had previous experiences where they think they learned English when the teachers used Spanish. As Karina, I'm used to, because Spanish was used when I attended school. So when I find myself in trouble in class, I do what I saw at school and not what I learned at university. And she reflects about this. This is the interesting thing, that what they saw during their primary and secondary education is stronger than what they learned in the undergraduate program. And this one is particularly interesting too, because it seems that Preservice teachers might have low expectations from students, so they avoid the use of L2. Susana says, because if I teach them only in English, really, they don't understand. They just don't. And what's interesting about this is that she had been teaching this class for around a month, but she already thought like this. I didn't want to exemplify this one because basically the Preservice teacher said, what, did I use Spanish? I didn't realize. I'm not supposed to do that, or something like that. And well, then we have the delayed translation, which was usually moments where school students were on task and Preservice teachers were monitoring around the classroom. Students asked Preservice teachers about vocabulary and instructions usually, and then they took the time to do mimics or relate that word to a cognate in Spanish, or to remind the student that they reviewed those words at the beginning of the lesson, but they still translated it into Spanish. So Fernando says, but it is always the case, not everyone understands. So in my opinion, it's better to provide the translation explicitly at the end, after having tried all the means, or the means I just used there, so they can understand. So what can we conclude from this? And I know that this is nothing new under the sun, but the L2 used in the classroom would differ from the national policy guidelines, differ from what the program might have expected from these Preservice teachers, and even differ from what Preservice teachers expected from themselves. The L1 persists to be the most used language during the teaching activity, still going on. By this, I don't mean that it's bad. I don't want to demonize the use of L1, but it would be worth to think why it persists and what we can do about it. Preservice teachers' good command of the L2 did not translate into more use of it in the classroom. And this is, well, there is research in Chile in relation to international examinations that have been applied through the years. And some of them say that when school teachers had better knowledge of the language, their students knew more English. But these authors have carried out research, not only this one, but others, where they have observed teachers and they have realized that the good command of the L2 does not necessarily translate into more use of it in the classroom. So maybe in the study about Chile, it would be worth to see what were the contextual features where these students learn more English. Well, L2 was used for practical motivations, right? So it was used for bridging knowledge, for understanding, for clarification of meaning. And the L2 was slowly incorporated by Preservice teachers throughout the semester by rules and instructions, which was something that professores guías, mentors, supervisors suggested. Preservice teachers did it, and it worked in most of the cases. But I also have to point out that when I was collecting the data, there was the social uprising, and Preservice teachers stopped attending schools for 2 weeks, and going back to school was never going back to normal. So that might have affected this progression as well. Well, as it was recently discussed in a paper that was just released last week, and I found out this in my data as well, it seems that Preservice teachers have low expectations regarding their learners. And that's why they avoid using the L2 as well. And by the end of the internal, the new ideas, there were new ideas about the concept of the good EFL. The good command of English was not one of the most important ones. Instead, there were others, such as being organized, keeping track of the grades from students. And well, we also have to consider that the L1 may have been shaped by school's context and previous experiences, as Dagle Blanques have discussed before. It seems that when pre-service teachers arrive in the schools, they forget what they experienced during their undergraduate program. And well, suggestions. Maybe it's time that we stop thinking about the L1 as a problem and we transform it into strategy to mediate the students' learning. If it is used in the classroom, then we could try to think about not overusing it or using it in a way where the learning of English is still the focus of the lesson. Because first of all, the L1 is always in our minds, so we can use it as a ground to learn another language. L1 can be a bridge to understand meaning and structure, and always using it judiciously, as Cook said. And the use of L1 has resulted into more fluid and efficient interactions in the classroom. And well, this would lead to creating a set of core practices in EFL in Chile that are related to our contextual features and where the strategies can be suitable for the EFL teaching. So that's it. You have my email if you want to come to me.
Okay, thanks.